Hello, and welcome to episode 8 of the Wayward Black Woman podcast. I'm your host, Alicia Gray, or AM Gray if you like, and I hope that you guys had a great weekend. There's a lot going on, so I just wanted to get right into it. The first thing I wanted to speak on was something minor to most, but something that really stood out to me. And this was the Nancy Pelosi incident in the U.S., of course. Many people have been stating that she will be replaced soon, whether she steps down or hopefully nothing else happens to her. But there's been a rumor that AOC, Ocasio-Cortez, has wanted to have her seat, right? Now, for many controversial reasons, I will not say what I think about this, but I do think that the falsehood from the very beginning of the so-called squad was, and I've said this many times on X, before it was X, even when it was Twitter, that it was a falsehood. These people are basically shills picked to look like controlled opposition, quote unquote, because the Democrats don't do anything and have for a very long time not really represented the people that are voting for them. So they pick these false oppositional people to make them look as if they're doing something, like they're some phony oppositional force. And these people are just basically following the same rules of white liberalism, but with a little bit more spunk. I guess that's the only word I could use, spunk, because it's really quite silly. And it pushes the radical white liberalism norm even further to the left. As far as the black representative, she says a lot of stuff but doesn't do much of anything. And then, of course, Ocasio-Cortez is pushing the immigration issue as far as she possibly can. And I don't have a problem with people who are liberal as far as immigration or migration is concerned, but I do have a problem with people who have a hidden agenda, right? And I think that her radicalism is based in a lot of white liberal nonsense. And in the end, it's going to end up being nothing but a bunch of talk. I've told you that from the beginning. She was an actress. She won a contest. This is real talk. And many years ago, when she was put into place, she was put into place for a reason, right? And, the fact that this was thwarted the other day, or actually yesterday, is, to me, stating something. Now, the fact that Nancy Pelosi herself was backing the opponent, that also says to me, something's not right here. Something's under the surface that's going on within the Democratic Party. And unfortunately, whatever it is, we still might lose as constituents, because how is any of that going to help us when we really need people to represent us if we still don't have people that properly understand what we need or care what we need, right? Or care about what we need. We have semi-solutions, but for a very long time, we've not had any real answers. And I don't believe that it's going to get much better unless we start communicating exactly what we need. And part of the problem is many, Democrats and the constituents who follow them are very afraid to speak on certain issues because it's just been the tradition not to talk about things. But eventually we're going to have to talk about things in order to get things done, or nothing's going to get done, especially not with having the Republican majority, even if it's slight, in both the House and the Senate. This is just a no-brainer. We're at a standstill. So at least give us someone who's not over here every 5 minutes talking about let's fight a decision that's already been made with Donald Trump pretty much on migration. If you guys hear something in the back, that's the washer, so don't worry about that. So that's the first point I wanted to get out, right? I wanted to let it be known that this has to really be talked about. Many people will overlook it. That's a significant thing right there. It's been talked about for many years that this is the position that she's vying, to get Nancy Pelosi's seat. And with all that stuff going on with Nancy Pelosi hurting her hip overseas, the mainstream media, many people call it the lamestream media, are pretty much scripted puppets at this point. And they're out there talking about how old she is. And yeah, she is old. I am in no way disagreeing. I think they should have a mandatory retirement age by the age of 85. And this is not ageism. This is just because after a certain time of being in Congress, you really need to retire to give a chance to other people that are trying to get the job. And yes, your cognitive abilities do decline after a certain time. And I will tell you, I'm 50 years old now, and I believe that should be the case because you really, you honestly need to move over. So I have no problem with the fact of, them saying, oh, okay, she's old, she fell, she hurt her hip. But it's always overemphasized. The 85-year-old fell and hurt her hip. Fell down the stairs. It's giving everything but I've fallen and I can't get up. For those of you guys who remember that commercial from the 80s and the 90s, everything but that, right? So for Life Alert, it's giving all those vibes, and we really don't need that over and over again. But I think that it was done right when she was going for that position, and it couldn't have been better timed. I don't know if she tripped by accident. I don't know if they tripped her. I'm just going to put it out there like that. But just at the time that someone else was going for her seat, she tripped and fell. You know what I'm saying? So I'm like, whatever. But the thing was, it wasn't necessary to have all of that negative coverage. And when you read articles about that, in particular, they emphasize, the ageism, scenario. Oh, AOC is the younger component and she's trying to get rid of the older Democrats. Okay, yeah, but if AOC was talking about something that was for real, quote unquote, instead of fantasy liberal land with a bunch of Green New Deal nonsense, we need people that didn't grow up in a box. I need people that can do more than just read a textbook about something that black people wrote and understand what black people need. And I need someone who's old enough to understand, to tell people who are younger, I don't want any kids because I don't think they're going to live, is maybe a bad thing to be telling our youth out there, right? So there's a lot of things I don't like about her, not as a personal person, I do not know her, but as far as the agendas that she's pushing. And I definitely don't need people who are leaning towards things and we all do because of our race, lead, in one direction or the other. But I don't need someone who specifically, is not going to be an impartial person when it comes to taking care of business. And I don't trust her, and I never have. So that's the first thing on the agenda, watching out for things that are happening coincidentally at the same time as other things happening. The second thing here, when we're talking about coincidences, and for those of you guys who don't know, coincidences is going to be my quote-unquote catchphrase. It always has been, because people want to call you this and that and debate this and that. We're just going to say things are happening coincidentally, not only on X and other sites that I post upon, but just in general. So we're just going to talk about them, and you can make your own emphasis as far as what you want to believe, okay? I'm just going to talk about them and put them into perspective. So the second thing here in the coincidences podcast today, we want to talk about Sushir Balaji, the OpenAI chapter creator who was found dead. He's age 26, or was, and they've now determined that to be a suicide. I did post this on X as well. Now, many people have called this man a whistleblower, and I don't know necessarily. I don't know. I see a lot of people leaving the field of AI, right? When we're talking about AI in general being controversial. The next one was, before this, the godfather of AI, Jeffrey Hinton, quits Google and warns over dangers of misinformation, right? So his whole thing was, it's scary what we can do with AI, and we need to regulate it. And then there was the other guy, the Indian gentleman, his name slips my mind right now, who also quit because of the same reason, because AI became sentient. You guys remember that? Well, here's the deal. I don't know if this is a hoax or not. I'm not trying to be rude, but the fact that there are copyright lawsuits against AI is not a big, huge deal. And I think that one thing about calling him a whistleblower is he's, saying what people already know. I think that he was so young, he could not have been there for very long in order to develop enough information to be a whistleblower. I mean, what could he have known that people don't already know? When you're dealing with AI, you guys know I'm a supporter of AI because AI can be used to help people. It can also be very dangerous, right? On the flip side, so you have to realize, if you're sitting here at a campsite and you're building a fire and you don't really know the right way to build that fire, maybe it's your first fire that you've built in the woods and you let it burn out of control, you could burn down a forest like in California right now, like that's burning wildly out of control, like many of the fires they've had, which have been arsons, right? The majority of them. But you could completely burn down 300 acres of forest land if you don't know what you're doing. This is AI, the fire. Or you could have a completely normal campsite and sit there and mind your own business and clean up afterwards. Everything went fine. It was perfectly safe. You knew what you were doing. You figured it out, poured water over it, made sure the coals weren't hot, and you left, right? And at the end of the day, perhaps you didn't know that fire, could do some other things, and you took that information and, gave it to some other people and realized, hey, we can use fire and coal for this and that and the third. This really works. This has been a breakthrough. So now that we understand that fire has many different properties, and in essence, AI is a lot like fire. It has a tremendous potential. I mean, fire helps us cook. Fire helps, to keep us warm in our water heaters, and arguably we can go back to maybe electricity, but when you understand that electricity is also fueled by coal a lot of the times in that same fire, right, that electrical reaction is still pretty much the same thing. Over the years, fire has helped us tremendously. Now, if we were scared of fire every time we saw it and we thought, oh God, we're going to burn down everything, fire, we're scared of it, shut it all down, fire looks just like a volcano, which is basically the whole copyright argument. Well, we're never going to get anywhere until we start to regulate AI properly. And that's something where Congress needs to be involved, and Congress needs to get its, self together as far as AI is concerned and start to understand the necessary steps that should be taken in order to regulate it, period. There should be never any copyright argument about AI. Realize every time we learn something, every time we scan something, whether it be from a encyclopedia, for those of you guys who are old enough to remember what a real encyclopedia was, it's got a danger of having a copyright infringement. Just going from Wikipedia, a regular encyclopedia like in the library, or what we used to have when I was a kid before the internet was here. Hint, hint, those of you guys who aren't old enough to remember, the ARPANET was invented in 91. And, I graduated high school in 92. So that tells you something. But that wasn't even the internet. That was the ARPANET. That was the predecessor. So you can imagine, we actually looked through books and we didn't get an update until like once a year, and we had to buy a whole new set of encyclopedias, which were like $800 to $1,600, right? That was a grift, right? Every year trying to get updated information about plants and science and all the stuff I used to love to read about as a kid, So I used to love looking through encyclopedias. Well, when Wikipedia came out, what do you think it got its initial information from? And you say, well, that's something that was open to the public. Not necessarily. Did every single encyclopedia maker say that was specifically in my encyclopedia? Because they used to have different companies that produced them. You can't use our information for this particular copyright. And if they did, what eventually happened? So again, AI is a lot like a new internet that's developing, and all these fears that we're having now happened when the internet that we're on and we use daily now was just evolving. So that's something that we need to consider. Everybody was afraid of Y2K. If you guys are old enough to remember, from 1999 to 2000, we're going to party like it's 1999. I'm not trying to oversimplify it. I'm just trying to make it so that it's relevant, so that you understand how you look from a different perspective. I think AI is going to be on the horizon no matter what we do. I think they're determined to make sure that AI is going to be the next internet. It just is. The problem is you have bad actors, quote unquote, out here making AI into something devilish. And this is where we need to consider regulation. It's not even a consideration, and I am a staunch advocate on regulating AI. For those of you who see my clothing line, that's at aliciagray.com. You see my designs were made from AI. Did I use someone else's photographs? Because I use my own prompts that I developed myself for every single photograph. Because I really enjoy designing and making things myself. But if you understand something, every photograph that you design, everything that you think about is already on the internet. You can't think of something new, and even if you draw it, you're still pulling from data that you already have seen somewhere. So basically, this is where they're coming from with the argument regarding OpenAI. You see it somewhere, but you can't replicate it unless it's drawn. So if a computer does it, then it's copyright infringement because they saw it somewhere. It doesn't make sense. Everything we learn is going to be based upon something we've seen, heard, thought of before. So this is the real problem with AI. It's going to replicate every single thing until it almost resembles us and surpasses us and becomes sentient. That's the real argument. And then it becomes us and able to control us. Now, the bad actors over there are the ones who want to, put a chip or something in us to have that AI come out and say, now I control a human being. And even though people don't want to talk about it, that's really where we're going. Given the sexism that's still, bountiful in this world, and the racism against especially, darker skinned women. And when I say that, I mean women of color, not just darker skinned African American women, but women of color, African American women, and so forth. I think we need to examine possible, civil rights actions as far as AI is concerned. There was a little bit of that talk earlier about AI misidentifying black faces and calling them animals and all kinds of things, misidentifying us as criminals, and how that can be addressed. Those are things that Congress is so slow to address. I don't know when that will be addressed, but it needs to be on the front line. We're sitting here talking about a copyright infringement situation which can't even necessarily be proven in court. Not unless you went straight to someone's site, just like I said, I designed everything myself and then took that same design and put it onto yours. But if someone says, I see 7 different images and someone put them together in AI and thought of a code for it, and they kind of look like one of mine, you realize that's how your mind works. Your mind builds on top of different images that it sees, and it creates something that's a likeness, whether you're drawing it, whether you're creating a song, or whatever you're doing. I'm not trying to go against creator. I'm a creator. Definitely that, but I'm trying to put it into perspective. What needs to happen is people not getting angry. See, because this looks like a distraction to me. You know, many people who have quit AI have quit for more prominent reasons. They've quit because, I mean, this machine literally became sentient. And I was like, you know, that was more important than what's going on right now. I'm not saying I'm disrespecting this person who died of suicide, is what they're saying his cause of death was. I'm saying a computer developed a human-like quality and surpassed your way of thinking. That is the most important thing right now that should be on the table. Yes, that's going to be a copyright issue that Congress needs to deal with, but I don't think that anybody should be dismissing AI and be just fearful of fire, right? Because it looks like a volcano. You need to be fearful, but you need to be mindful. It could save lives. AI has the ability to create situations where we can extend life, to learn things from it. And this is where this little boy who passed away, young gentleman that passed away, wanted to, and enter into that conversation. But understand, it's just like you wanting to take a job into cancer research and realizing that there are some crooked people that are funding that cancer research program and want to use, this program for their own specific circumstances, right? We're never going to be in a situation where everything's going to be like we want it to be. You get there and you realize you got to put your big boy and big girl clothes on, because even though you wanted to work for this company all your life, and I'm just using this as an example, but say you work for Disney and there are some rumors that Disney's involved in some nefarious activities with children, and you work there and you realize some of this might be true. Are you going to sit there and, I don't know, get upset at yourself for not realizing what everyone else told you? Or are you just going to say, either I'm going to suck it up and stay here because I should have known better, or I'm going to quit and earnestly move on because, this is not for me. I think that sometimes in life we need to understand that everything's not going to be totally level. Anytime Elon Musk tells you that AI is extremely dangerous, it's extremely dangerous. I'm not saying that millionaires and billionaires don't always tell the truth, but he's straight up telling you this is dangerous. And I agree. It's just like fire. You need to learn how to regulate that fire and be so good at regulation that you're just like a fireman. Now, honestly, firemen are going to die if it's an extremely dangerous fire, but it's rare, right? It still happens. But we need fire, and we need to know how that's a very special element and how it can help us in so many different ways. So, that's the end of my lecture on OpenAI and the unfortunate problem here where the ChatGPT gentleman, Balaji, did pass away. And again, it looks like it's a hoax to talk about copyright and fair use and put that into the spotlight versus, oh yeah, AI is being used by the military to build military robots, that they're supposedly controlling, that can shoot machine guns at 10 times the speed of the average human. I mean, yeah, let's just not talk about that. Let's not talk about the fact that AI has become sentient, and we know that. No one has talked about that. And let's not talk about the good ways that AI can be used to help solve our problems with disease and death and childbirth, because our childbirth levels are declining in the U.S. Let's not talk about the things that can be positive. I do think that, again, Congress needs to regulate that. I have no problem with creators being paid if their work is really being stolen, but if they're just being hypersensitive, right? I mean, there's an actual way of looking at code to tell who stole whose code. So I don't know if, that's the argument, or they just don't want their work to be in any way in an AI database, which at this point, just like an encyclopedia and all that knowledge for all those years that was in all those encyclopedias, you're not going to be able to necessarily stop that. All that knowledge that was in those encyclopedias, how do you think the internet began in the first place? It came from those encyclopedias and all those dictionaries, right? Now, of course, you can still copyright a dictionary, and it's not stopping anybody from copyrighting an encyclopedia now. But the information is most likely also going to be on the internet. Can they use word for word what's in your book? No. But there's going to be a variation, whether it be Wikipedia, whether it be just an open file somewhere. And as long as they don't plagiarize you, it's there over and over again. Or if they are writing a paper or something, they document that they use your specific work. Now, with OpenAI, it's up in the air. But I think that the situation is there needs to be a way of determining a specific code that can be used for each particular business. And then if someone infringes upon that code, it sounds complicated, and it is. That's what I'm saying. Congress needs to be up on it. Then at that point, either they have to pay the person a specific fee, a couple cents every time they use that code. And then, what I'm saying? There's a way that can be used to regulate it instead of you just saying, oh, it's bad, we're scared, oh, it's stealing. That's a lie. Because if that were the case, every time you thought of something new based upon 2 or 3 things that you'd seen and put them into, this is how the mind works, and built it up into one specific movie, one specific book, one specific whatever, poem, then you'd be stealing from all those people that you were thinking of. You put it into your own terms and build something new. As long as someone isn't taking your work specifically point blank off of your page, off of your whatever, and just putting those words specifically in there, your specific code only, then that's not stealing, right? And we have to understand that. Having the likeness of someone, it can happen in many different ways. If it becomes something else, then at that point, it might just be something else. And that's just the bottom line, So, those are my personal views on AI. Now, to the news of the day. Coincidentally, we have quote unquote drones being flown over New Jersey, New York, Connecticut, and I believe now the sightings as of today, where I am, it is December 17th, have been shown all the way down to Virginia. This is the year 2024 still for those who might be listening later. So, the drones over New Jersey, we're just going to call them those because that's where it supposedly started. Where do we start? Where do we begin? Many people have discovered that New Jersey has a dead area in between New York and New Jersey. That's the first point. And have stated that there was a gentleman on Joe Rogan, I believe, who said that this dead area is the most prevalent for UFO sightings in the whole entire country. Not, Area 51, but northern New Jersey. So what's happening is there's a hyper focus on New Jersey right now, obviously, because this is quite strange. And that's what makes me think that something's wrong with it. Is it distracting from something else that we're missing? Something else is going on? I mean, we're getting an Orwellian War of the Worlds combination here in the year 2024, and it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Is this real, or is this a government operation, which many people think is an inside job, that the American government themselves is doing this? They've put up either some test pilot program. It's been rumored everything from Donald Trump and his Space Force nonsense is running a practice course, and the government knows about it. You remember the first time Donald Trump was in office, he had a Space Force task force put together, and many people forgot about that. And coincidentally again, he's about to get back into office, so, maybe. But then he was saying he wanted to shoot them down. So it doesn't make any sense. That makes no sense, that theory. Also, they're saying, it's a situation where the government is trying to use their own apparatuses. I don't know, one is a drone, supposedly, and the other one is the actual object, the actual UFO. So the drones are trying to shoot at the UFOs in order to bring them down, because the government is trying to hide the fact that there are, UFOs out there, or whatever they're calling them right now, I don't know. Honestly, I think that, many people obviously are saying several different things. Another is there's under the ocean, there's a whole nother world, and there are experimental communities for being under the ocean that the government is working on, and private organizations are having actual, kids that they're putting underneath their embryos to see if they can grow up underwater. It's all kinds of stuff going on where people are coming up with all types of explanations right now. I wish I could offer my own. I really am just waiting to see like everyone else. It does seem odd. I've mentioned to my daughter, because we've lived in North Carolina, I've seen these type drones. And, being an African-American person, I just assumed they were illegal police drones or something, and they just stick in the sky and they wouldn't move. It wasn't like, the moon or anything. It was just a drone. It was just sitting there. It wasn't a star. And sometimes I'd move and I'd go to another part of the city and I see it again. And I'm like, that's got to be a drone. And it's a huge drone. And, I think that I've seen the ones that are in the triangle. I've seen all of that stuff. It's not like it's a big shock to me. And I think that many people right now are saying this is being reported around the world. It's not just in New Jersey. So, yeah, it definitely could be something that's happening. It's a shift in the cosmos. Is it planned? I don't know. One thing I do know is that, whatever the government's going to give you for an explanation is probably not going to be true. And you're going to have to make and determine your own path regarding your behavior, what you're going to do in reference to this, and how you're going to be able to internalize this psychologically, right? We need to understand something. In particular, the United States keeps its citizens, a lot of us, at the lowest level of psychological need. We've all studied psychology, and we know that Maslow's hierarchy of needs, at the bottom is the basic: shelter, food, shelter, safety. Right now, with the way the economy is, the prices are going up so high people can barely afford to eat. They can barely afford to rent or pay mortgage, because those interest rates are going up there too. And they have problems with law enforcement, where people who can't afford the rent or the mortgage are maybe in a neighborhood that's not too safe. Now, we're not saying that it matters if you're rich or poor, because violence is happening everywhere randomly. So at which point do you feel safe? And how can you feel safe in an environment that's like that? And this is what I'm talking about with Congress and all of this. It'll eventually go down as far as prices are concerned, from Elon Musk and Donald Trump. I suppose that the number one problem we're having right now, outside of migration, which is also going to take $1 trillion or whatever to implement, should be ignored and put on the back burner, right? Wrong. Many people obviously cannot wait for someone to figure out, that doesn't have any financial needs or problems or wants regarding safety, how they're going to live their lives and be safe. Many people are becoming homeless. Many people literally are having their rents raised just randomly because, the apartment managers or whomever, now, I'm not going to say it's all of them. Some are good guys. They just had their money and their taxes raised that they had to pay. Okay, I'll give them that. But some are just jerks. And they're just going in and buying up properties like Blackstone and BlackRock, and it's out of control. They're buying up multiple units all over the country, brokers openly doing it, and it should be illegal. That's what we need to be addressing. We need to make someone be held accountable for what's going on here. Yes, we'd like to go and think maybe in a few months aliens will absolve us. But, the way the economy is going, maybe it'll be a blessing. Because, you will own nothing and be happy. We can't ignore that phrase. It could be taken as a utopia where, okay, you don't need to own anything because everything's given to you. But at the same time, if you don't have ownership of anything, how can you be happy? And we have to understand, it doesn't look like the needs of the American people are on the table right now, especially of African American people. It doesn't look like at all within the next year you're going to have your needs addressed. I mean, Donald Trump could surprise everyone. Who knows? Because he is just a, man of surprises. But the bottom line is, while you're waiting for them to fight back and forth and distract you with Dem Republican nonsense and all the things the Democrats screwed up and all the things the Republicans are going to screw up more, trying to fix it, are going to take millions and trillions of dollars out of the taxpayers' pockets and leave you right at the bottom of that hierarchy of needs again. You notice that every time that something's about to get done that should have been done 10 years ago, it's going to be made worse before it gets better, and you're just going to have to suck it up. And aren't you tired of sucking it up? Aren't you tired of living in your car or, trying to figure out how you're going to make your rent or mortgage, working 2 jobs? And nothing ever really getting done. And I mentioned the Hegelian dialectic the other day, problem, reaction, solution, which is just a simplified way of saying it, but it's pretty much that. They give you a problem, and then you react to it, or as the American people, and we're going to say some of the American people, it's primarily the mainstream media, they're going to overreact. And, politically they may overreact in Congress, and they're going to pass something that's going to be so restrictive that it's going to create a solution, but that solution is going to be negative for you. And many people were talking as well about the drone situation. Why are they doing this? Because they're about to pass drone legislation, or one was about to expire, and they're trying to make it known that drones could be dangerous. Maybe that's the reason why. And so therefore they want to put this out there. Is it a distraction? So then they can say, okay, now we can restrict drones after midnight. We can restrict drones of a different size, or after 8 o'clock, or in specific areas, or you can't fly a drone at all. More governmental control. And in that sense, you have to wonder, what are they trying to hide? What do they not want you to see? What is it that's happening that we're missing? All these coincidences, and that's another coincidence. Coincidentally, that legislation was about to expire, and then we see drones everywhere. All I can say is there's a lot of coincidences, and that's all I'm gonna say. And you can put two and two together and figure it out yourself. Many people already have. YouTube, TikTok, whatever platform you're on, I don't see much on Facebook, but, honestly, not much goes on like that on Facebook unless it's something where it's, related to the family or the structures that are already in place. And I think that observing social media will also help you observe how things are in real life. The way, one is family and friends, social networks. One is, work. That's the platform that you go on, to talk about your work and things of that nature, the ones you can put your resume up. The other one is, Instagram, where you can, casually put up different things, but in small amounts to tell who you are and all of this. It evolved into that. It was just the live thing where people were using it to speak openly before TikTok was there. But you can see the way the platforms are being used. And X now is basically something where you can say what you want to say, but then it's going to be limited because a lot of people aren't really paying as much attention to it as it used to be. So there's freedom, but then there's still this societal understanding of this platform can't be used for this, right? Or it really isn't used for this. It's a social understanding. So we divide it similarly, social media, just like we divide things in our lives. But I think that division really needs to stop, and we really need a comprehensive platform that does all of these things in one, so that we can actually have places that specifically say, yes, I want to speak my mind about this in one way. One aspect of this platform, you're going to family and friends. The next aspect of this platform would be, blah, blah, blah. See, and this is common sense. People who understand psychology, who studied psychology like I have, we understand that. And that's one reason why I have a love-hate relationship with social media, because I understand it. I understand the people that they consult to build it and how they build our platforms. They have to study how you think in order to be able to get you onto that platform and get you to buy things and get you to become not addicted to it, but to be able to use it in a way that benefits both you and, of course, the company that you're essentially kind of working for, even if you're not getting paid. Now, we see this with YouTube on that model, but, where they definitely are working for YouTube and getting paid. But it's also sort of like you have to believe that you need them more than they need you, right? And you have to understand that psychologically, without them, you're going to feel a void in your life or in your perspective. And that's something that I think AI is going to address in the future as well. I don't see people understanding that the bad actors that are human are causing these problems. When you deal with the reality of it, there should always be upfront. What can we do to reduce harm? And if you see, when Google started out, it said do no harm, right? They used to joke about it, or be less evil. Something like that they had for their logo. But it was a joke for them, because they know that human nature is going to try to tear everything down. And even though they start off with good intentions for the internet, and they started off with good intentions supposedly, we know there are bad actors out there that are going to tear it down and use it for bad purposes. You never seem to blame the bad actors, or if you're one of those bad actors, blame yourself for what's happening in society. And this is something that's a fatal flaw. You're blaming everyone in AI that are the producers, but you're not blaming yourselves, if it's a situation where you're going to manipulate AI to your own advantage. And I don't believe that anybody right now in the consumer market is out here purposely manipulating AI. I think we're playing with it. We're learning about it. We're just at the beginning phases of it. I think there are some bad actors that are in the market of creation that are already there waiting in the wings. And I believe there are some consumers that are waiting to take advantage of other consumers that are purposely trying to violate copyrights, that are purposely trying to use it for the military, making these military robots, which they already have in design and implementation. So you can forget that. They're already there. Anything they're telling you, they're 10 years ahead of the game in designing already. If you're just finding out about it, they've already done it. And this is something that the American public in particular is in denial about as well. You have to blame and give some of that sort of weight that you're trying to put onto these creators, onto yourselves, for not demanding that they have accountability and that they regulate this up front. Because you have to address Congress regarding that. You have to do your part. And you have to make sure that when these social networks are developed, they're developed in ways that aren't necessarily harmful, and that you have your say-so, so that you won't end up with the reality TV shows only, like if you're watching television or something, flipping tables and fighting all the time. And this is something Black women have been guilty of not doing. This is a perfect example of not doing regarding our own image and letting people drag us through the mud. The Real Housewives of so-and-so and such, the fighting, the bickering, the bird brain women with IQs below even remotely average, representing the entire black communities and showing this type of decrepit behavior to people all over the world. And it's literally replicated to the point where there's the Real Housewives of Dubai, and all over the world these people are replicating this behavior, and this is what they think black women are like. We have low IQs, we're petty, and having grown up in poverty, I can tell you it is not all people that are poor or all people that live in what we call the projects, but it is a project-like behavior that I don't care how much money these women supposedly have conned people to get, have stolen, have, gotten from men or whoever gave them money growing up. That mentality does not change with wealth. And that is embarrassing. I don't care if you're the poorest person in the world. You should never be embarrassed about not having wealth. But that behavior, displaying that behavior all over the world and having people see you be a petty, immature, uneducated black person and go out there and fight one another and act just like a witch 24 hours a day, and that's how you make money. People that do that are not the best of people, period. And if you are a grown person and you grow up like that and you think it's okay for the rest of your life, and then people start rewarding you for that. What's that other one where they're fighting on that Zeus network? It becomes a habit, a very bad habit. And it becomes a situation where people start using that as a moniker for black people, and in particular black women. And I, for one, think that also needs to be regulated. It does. Because people are exploiting black women by using these idiots in these, so-called reality TV programs to portray us as being absolutely dumbfounded morons with no moral values who will do anything in order to make money. Now, I'm not saying you don't have freedom of speech, but I think that's a good example. It's just like it's that blurred line in between, okay, is this really a civil rights violation where these people who we know, the majority of them are not black, that are running these networks, well, with the exception of Zeus, because we know that was ratchet. That was built based upon the fact that they thought black people were ratchet. And there was other black people who built it to exploit other black people, which is even worse. That internalized oppression is awful. But when we're talking about these other little networks where these people are popping up and showing out and making us look like idiots instead of, showcasing some of the smart things that we've done over the years and helping other black women, this is being done to tear us apart as families, as black women, and to demonize black women. And I don't really mind telling you, it's not my favorite thing. I've never even really watched one of these programs all the way through because it's so stupid. So stupid. It's just like we're here for your entertainment and we're not. And, like a modern day minstrel show. So, again, I get the, I need some entertainment thing, but why are black women, running around with big lips, attitudes, and fighting one another to give you some sort of entertainment? And why is that acceptable? Now, you'll find in areas that grew up with only themselves, a lot of times in Atlanta and places that are smaller metro areas, they think it's acceptable to act that way in public. But you have to teach your child home training. As we say in old school, home training, quote unquote. You have to teach people how to act. So it's to a certain extent where we have to have that division line between, what's acceptable and what's a violation. And so as we start to go into the AI conversation, we go into, defining what's acceptable and not a civil rights violation for black women. We have to have better regulations, but not over regulations, right? And this is something that's consistently a problem in the United States just throughout. It has been, it will continue to be until we as a people learn that we have to play a part in making these things right instead of just praising this behavior. I'm not saying, it's immoral to wear something tight or to, do whatever dance you want to do, have whatever rap you want to have. But I think that with black women, it's sort of like it's acceptable to do the wrong thing and to show us either in these uptight, positions where we're always at work, especially in the mainstream media, we're always having to do the right thing. And then they show the opposite as if that's some sort of relief from that. The total opposite, some morons fighting and wearing wigs and makeup all the time, always talking about money and being completely shallow and involved in very, very immature relationships, that's the real us. You see how that's also controlled opposition when it's not. They're both kind of like fallacies of reality, right? Like, when are we going to get to see the real us? So maybe AI is just a formation of reality. You think AI is not the real us, but we're not even viewing the real us on a daily basis. So maybe we should start with us before we start addressing the fallacies with AI. So that's my sermon for today. I'm out, guys. I'm actually going hoarse here. I had kind of a rough week. You guys know I had strep last week. Took my antibiotics and feeling better, but then my lupus started acting up. You guys know I have mixed connective tissue disease and lupus, which I was recently diagnosed with. And it started bothering me, and my foot started, left leg started acting up. It kind of is difficult to explain. It had some splinters and my toe splinters from time to time. And they're telling me that that's normal as far as this condition, but it's extremely painful. So I've been trying to deal with that, but I wanted to make sure that I got this podcast in before, I really, lost my will to do so, because it's just been kind of like a busy, busy week. But there's a lot going on everywhere. So I know for you guys that are caught in the snow, I wish you well. I hope that everything works out for you. I hope that, things get better around the world. Whatever's going on, I hope that we're able to resolve it. And, we're able to kind of move on and people can have some sort of peace of mind. But I'm saying, please don't, take for granted whatever's told to you about this UFAP situation, because I really don't know what explanation I'm going to come up with. God forbid they tell you the truth. But, be mindful. Don't just go to religion automatically. Understand that, spiritually we're all changing. And we need to understand that fear is a natural reaction, but it's not the only reaction, and it should never be. So, just be mindful. Anyway, I'm out. I'll talk to you guys a lot later, and I hope that you have a great rest of your week. I'm out. Bye.